Mr. Sibal, just to pick up on the point that we just heard there from Mr. Shashank, and I do remember reading Lalit Mansingh, also former Foreign Secretary, saying that whether it was $10,000 or $10 billion, the process that one had to go through while getting the aid was extremely tiresome and time-consuming. That was the point that was being made there by Mr. Shashank. So one, of course, you know, the fact that India's economy has grown, that we're fully capable of taking care of our own needs. But how much of this also has to do with the fact that often this aid money is seen from the prism of strings being attached to it?
Well, in this case, I don't think there is that kind of consideration that there are strings attached to it. You know, when we had this Aid India consortium, and later it was the name was changed to Aid in Development something. In my time when I was Foreign Secretary, we decided we're not going to accept aid from a handful of countries, 27, 28 countries, and we had to appear before them. And small countries would grill us about our economic policies, about our priorities. It was humiliating. So we decided that we will accept assistance only from very large donors like Japan, etc., and not small little sums of $100 million and whatever else will give these countries the right to question us and grill us, as I said, on our economic policies, etc. Here in this case, can you imagine the Maldives offering us aid and Indian government accepting in the context of what is happening between us and the Maldives? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And 700 crores is a very, very small sum, you know, insofar as our resources are concerned. We had these enormous floods in Kashmir, for example.
Yes.
We handled that without any foreign assistance. But coming back to the point that was made earlier, which is a valid one, that when you have a national disaster management policy, you cannot have in that clause which says that under no circumstances we are going to accept foreign assistance. This will depend on the scale of the disaster, the massiveness of the challenge that you're being faced with, and there could be a situation in a real calamity where actually the resources you have immediately available may not be enough in terms of dealing with the problems on the ground. And in those circumstances, you may accept aid in kind or in terms of personnel and everything else. But this judgment should be left to the government of India. I just can't for a moment believe, not for a moment believe, that the government of India is so insensitive towards such an important state as Kerala. To actually avert their eyes from the scale of the disaster and be penny pinching and not give them what they want. But this should not be used as a handle to also, in a sense, I should be careful in the word I use, but blackmail in inverted comma the government that look, all these Qatar and UAE and Maldives are offering us X, and it amounts to X, and now you give us that X if you are going to reject that. This is ridiculous. I mean, the judgment should be left to the central government. And in any case, public opinion is very alert. And if there is a feeling that the government of India is not reacting adequately to the disaster and is withholding what is needed in terms of financial aid, I think there will be pressure on the government. And therefore, I don't think this is a casual decision that the government has taken. It's a principled decision. And I think their assessment would be that it is within our resources to deal with this, and we will deal with this. And as the situation unfolds in terms of more financial assistance, in terms of rehabilitation and everything else, they would obviously make more money available, because this is our country, our people.
Right.
Why should there be any feeling anywhere that their tragedies and their losses do not have the same resonance in New Delhi as somewhere else?
Absolutely. We certainly hope that is going to be the case. Ambassador Singh, coming back to you on the point that Mr. Sibal made, that this has now unfortunately become a matter of foreign policy, or at least an incident of foreign policy, if I could call it that. What could be the implications from here on, especially with the UAE?
No, there are no implications. Well, they'll leave, you know, the UAE ego slightly bruised, but that's all right. They'll learn something from this. I was just looking at the past thing. They didn't offer any money at the time of the Bhuj earthquake. Though the Indian community, that time I was ambassador in Abu Dhabi, they collected a lot of material, which we sent by ship. Which then piled up, because then it's also a question of distributing stuff, which becomes, because bottlenecks develop. And if we get too much stuff coming in from NGOs, that also becomes an issue to handle. But one thing is very clear. I think Mr. Sibal's made a much better case for the government than the government has bothered to make for itself, which only explains that really it is a public relations disaster for the government in Delhi. They've just not bothered to explain. After Prime Minister went there and he's come back, they're literally in a state of mourning after Mr. Vajpayee is passing away. Why can't they be proactive and explain there's a roadmap? We are making an assessment and we are not turning away 700 crores. We have enough money and we will keep providing it. And there is a roadmap. Where are the institutions which are supposed to be assessing this? National Disaster
Management Authority.
Etc. authority. They should be on the ground. They should be talking to us, talking to the people, explaining that no, we have a roadmap. But certainly for things yesterday, Shashi Tharoor was making a valid point because everybody piled on to him. Why did he go to Geneva? Probably he went because of Kofi Annan. But he made a very valid point. He says, what about healthcare implications of this? Do we have enough vaccines? Do we need to go to WHO?
Well, the WHO is already involved, sir.
Why does it require?
Sure, the WHO is already involved, and the state government at this point in time says that the current assistance that the WHO is being provided is enough. The intervention currently being provided is enough. But let me give wrap-up comments to you, Mr. Shashank. To use Mr. Singh's words, that this has turned out to be a public relations disaster, at least as far as the centre is concerned. And the point that Mr. Sibal was also making, that perhaps there ought to have been better communication to explain and articulate India's position in this matter. Given what we've seen that has happened so far, what would you suggest is the best way forward?
The best way would be for the official spokesman of the External Affairs Ministry and the other PIB officials to put it across that, yes, India is doing whatever best is possible, and it's Kerala, of course, is the worst affected state. But other coastal states in South India are also affected. And there is also an immediate requirement to see that people get assistance, medical assistance or rehabilitation assistance or whatever immediate relief is required. And that is the first priority to be used. Second is, yes, over a longer term, we need to ensure that there are these SDRF and NDRF teams which train people, youngsters and others, so that it becomes a collective effort, not only of the army and the NDRF forces, but also of the common masses. And they are also trained constantly in order to tackle these emergencies. Thirdly, there are all these various reports, Madhav Gadgil Committee report, Kasturi Rangan Committee report, all these reports, so they need to be taken care of in future, because if we are not able to take care of our people when things are going well, how do we expect that things will be much better off when there's a crisis situation? So therefore, we need to put our house together. The central government should give all the assistance. Other states also should pool in their resources. And I'm quite sure that Kerala should be able to tackle the situation bravely and effectively.
All right, so consensus on our panel that prudent of the Indian government not to accept foreign assistance, but the manner in which the decision has been communicated perhaps leaves a lot to be desired. We do have the provision to accept foreign assistance if that should be necessary. That's part of the policy that is in place. The question, though, is that it should be a principled decision that should be taken with a calibrated view. Kanwal, Sibal, Mr. Shashank and KC Singh, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Thanks very much for your time.